Section 8. The same secret blue in Egypt and in China. Egyptian blue is not the only ancient blue synthetic pigment. Another called Han blue is found on Chinese artifacts. It's also made with copper and superhot sand. It also glows in the infrared, but this blue was made a mere 2,000 years ago during the Han dynasty in the Chinese Empire. Han blue is found in the circle on the right, and Egyptian blue in the circle on the left. They're pretty far apart. Han blue is found at the tail end of the time the Egyptian alchemists were still cooking up batches of Egyptian blue, but the two have so many differences. Most historians think they must have developed independently. This is like the red-ochre cave paintings all over again. Unique colors discovered and used at the same time in different hemispheres. Alchemists working in two very different cultures converged on similar recipes for making artificial blue pigments. There's even the same kind of distance between the caves and Indonesia. Han blue pigment on the right is made at lower heat, and, this is important, it contains barium rather than calcium. Barium is about 10 times less common in the Earth's crust than calcium, but it's in the same column of the periodic table, so it's not surprising that it has similar chemistry. Barium, just like calcium, can bind a copper silicate lattice to make a blue color. The ore the Chinese used just happened to have more barium than the calcium-rich ore that the Egyptians used. The main difference in manufacture is that Egyptian blue used common chalk as a starting material, but it had to reach super high temperatures to get the copper, chalk, and sand to react all together. Han blue used a more rare barium mineral and more accessible temperatures as a result. The endpoint was similar. Three things fused together to make a durable and light-fast blue pigment. Blue copper ions were locked into a silicate crystal thanks to high temperatures and the chemistry of carbonate groups. Now, barium offered the Chinese another artificial color, shown on the right. If barium is mixed with less silicate by proportion, it makes a purple pigment that is less stable but still vivid, so we call it Han purple. A purple paint examined with X-ray fluorescence found the telltale signatures of barium and copper on painted terracotta figures buried in a Han Dynasty royal tomb. These terracotta statues, they're newer and smaller than the Qin Dynasty warriors that were discovered a few decades ago. These were the ones guarding the still unopened tomb with liquid mercury possibly inside. These are more famous. These are similar, just smaller in different times. Traces of Han purple were found on the larger Qin Dynasty warriors too. Although they were invented at different times, both of these synthetic blues fell from use independently, yet nearly simultaneously. Han blue and purple disappeared after the end of the Han Dynasty around 200 AD. Han blue did not survive the end of the Han Dynasty. Now, the recipe for Egyptian blue also did not survive the end of the Roman Empire around 500 AD. It was a secret guarded so closely that it was lost. These were the only significant synthetic pigments made before the 18th century, so more than 1,000 years would pass before new pigments were pieced together with new inorganic chemistry. The artificial blues are combinations of three elements: calcium or barium, copper, and silica. If you look at it this way, it makes sense that two empires could find these colors independently. It's harder to find the right proportions of three things than of two things like people did for synthetic vermilion and synthetic malachite, but it's a big world with a long history, and this allows for convergent experiments. The same thing happens in different places. There's only a few dozen common elements, and to get these blues, you have to combine three of them in a ratio of 1 part copper oxide, 1 part calcium oxide or barium equivalent, and 4 parts silicate sand. You mix the right things, heat it up for a long time, get rid of the stuff you don't need, and you have one of the brightest blue powders known. It doesn't matter if you're in Egypt or China. In fact, it doesn't matter what level of school you're in. High school students can now make their own Egyptian blue in class. Technically, the teacher made it for them, but close enough. We didn't make it in science writing class only because keeping the sample at high temperatures for a week, which it required, was inconvenient and slightly out of my disciplinary experience. As a biochemist, I'm comfortable with biological temperatures and pressures. Those are where biochemicals stay together, and I have this irrational fear that I'll burn the building down if I run a furnace too hot and too long. It's not really irrational because I have stories. But anyways, back to this paper. They tell their trick to making Egyptian blue. It's figuring out how to get the calcium and copper together, and they come stuck to other partners, so you have to remove those partners. Once you remove them, you mix them in with extremely hot melted sand. That's the silicate. The high school recipe here uses copper carbonate, malachite, and calcium carbonate, chalk. So in each case, you have to remove the extra carbonate. And there's the whole thing above my head. You could do it yourself if you had the right materials. So chemically speaking, carbonate has an automatic off switch. If you pull off one of its 3 oxygen atoms, you make carbon with 2 oxygens on it, or carbon dioxide. So look at this on the right side. Pulling off 1 red oxygen off the carbonate, and then pulling the 2 white hydrogens along with it, effectively turns the carbonate into CO2 left behind and water flying up to the top. The CO2 floats away, the H2O pours away, and the carbonate is gone. Then, without the carbonate, the copper and calcium left behind have no other partners. They have no choice but to bind the molten silicate, and if they're in the right proportion of the mixture, they will form Egyptian or Han blue. The only problem is that flipping that switch, pulling that oxygen off of the carbonate, is difficult because carbon-oxygen bonds are strong. The hydrogens, they're easy. No one worries about them. Chemists solve this problem by adding a flux. It helps break this bond, pull off the water, and clean the carbonate out of the sample, as they say. A flux is like a catalyst. It helps the reaction along, but it's different because it's used up in the reaction. It's a moot point if you have a lot of the flux around to be used up. Egyptian blue uses a natron flux based on soluble salty sodium in 3 forms: table salt, the sulfate, and the carbonate. The sodium helps form the carbon dioxide and it moves the reaction along. Once you know the proportions of the 3 components in the flux, making Egyptian blue is a 6-step process combining 4 ingredients. It's about as complex as making bread. The recipe for Han blue uses barium rather than calcium, copper oxide rather than carbonate, and does not require a flux or high temperatures. Maybe I should try that one. Acid and ammonia are added to Han blue to break the tight bond between copper and oxygen, so that copper, barium, and silicate can get together. These are like different recipes for making bread. Different regions might have different breads, but in the end analysis, it's definitely all bread. These pigments are definitely all blue. Even though it was invented thousands of years ago, Egyptian blue has unique properties that make it stand out from other chemicals. Some scientists even proposed using it as fingerprint dusting powder. If you used an infrared camera, it would glow super bright. The graph shows how this works. The red line on the left is the light coming in, and look at the wavelength, around 600 nanometers, where Egyptian blue absorbs red light. This is why it looks blue. Then the blue line on the right is the light that comes out after it's been stretched out by the Egyptian blue. See how the wavelengths are much longer, around 1000 nanometers, and that's much longer than the reddest red you can see, which is about 700. Because of Egyptian blue's strong sandy silicate lattice, it can be ground to a fine powder, and it will adhere to the loops and whorls of the oil of a fingerprint. And in a darkened lab, you just need visible light falling on the powder. It will glow in the infrared so much that the fingerprint becomes easy to see, as long as you have a camera that can detect infrared wavelengths. Egyptian blue is so stable that it was dusted onto a set of prints on porcelain, and then the scientists came back. These are left out on a ledge for 2 years, and the scientists came back and they still saw them glowing with the infrared color. This is a stable and sturdy pigment. No wonder that they all used it.